Bienvenido aquí a este lugar de amor, de sueños de ilusión, a este lugar de amor. Bienvenido aquí, si es un lugar de amor, de sueños de ilusión, a este lugar de amor. Bienvenido aquí.
Good morning. Welcome to Chalice Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We are a community of diverse beliefs and experiences, nurturing the liberal religious spirit and united by our desire to grow in love and in service. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your life's journey, you are welcome here. Whether you gather with us every Sunday, once or twice a year, or are with us this morning for the first time, we are glad you're here. I'm Reverend Sharon Wiley, Chalice's minister. Our worship musician this morning is our music director, Tim McKnight. Welcome to this online worship service. Welcome to those of you watching live using Zoom Sunday morning, and welcome to those of you who are watching the recording of this service later on Chalice's YouTube channel. For those of us using Zoom, please notice on your menu that there's a button that says CC Live Transcript. That is Zoom's closed captioning service, and you can click on it to hide the subtitle if you don't want to see closed captioning, or you can show the subtitle if you want that function on. So you're in control of that. Also on your menu is the chat button. For those of you who like to use the chat box during the service, and you'll see people are posting saying good morning right now, you're welcome to post in the chat. Please be sure that when you post that you use that little blue menu there, that drop-down menu, to select panelists and attendees. If you only post to panelists, it only comes to me and I won't see it during the service. And we want to use the chat for everyone to talk together. So please be sure to catch that. So let's all give ourselves a big hug of hello and welcome. If you're with other folks who consent to hugging, give them a hug as well. I want to especially welcome those of you who are newcomers to Chalice. Towards the end of the service, there will be a link in the chat box for adding your name to our email list. Our weekly email is the best way to get information about the many online groups and activities we offer using Zoom. Our plans to return to gathering in person are to be slow and cautious. So we anticipate being on Zoom for some time yet. Once you're on our email list, you will also receive information about our gathering for newcomers. Now, let's take a breath together.
We acknowledge that our service is taking place on the stolen territory of the Kumeyaay, meaning humans or people, and the Piamkawishim, meaning Western people. A land acknowledgement works to undo the intentional erasure of Indigenous people and to support the resilience and strength that all Indigenous people have shown. We acknowledge the original inhabitants as a first and critical step toward learning and working with Indigenous communities to secure meaningful partnership and inclusion in the stewardship and protection of their cultural resources and sacred homeland.
Now we light our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. The flaming chalice was first used during World War II by the Unitarian Service Committee as a symbol of life-saving refuge for people fleeing persecution in Europe. May our chalice flame burn brightly, that all who are seeking may find us. We come together that, I'll start over. We come together this morning in friendship, our yearning for connection and invitation to stop and rest and be. We come together this morning in hope, our yearning for a better world, an invitation to gather and dream and act. We come together this morning in love, our yearning for wholeness, an invitation to risk and reach and reveal. Come, let us worship together. This morning, we're going to spend some time going deeper with one of our beloved UU hymns. Tim will tell you more.
It was 40 years ago when Carolyn McDade penned the song Spirit of Life, which has arguably become the most beloved song of our UU faith tradition. It might be surprising to find out that, in fact, Carolyn McDade, who has basically written the unofficial UU theme song, doesn't even call herself a Unitarian Universalist. She does, however, call herself a spiritual feminist and a social activist. The song Spirit of Life began to take shape in 1981 after a social justice meeting that McDade attended. She left the meeting feeling discouraged and tired, on the verge of abandoning her social activism. But when she got home, she made her way to the piano, sat down exhausted, and as she describes, prayed the song into existence. Out of this fragile moment of uncertainty, Carolyn McDade prayed for the strength to continue fighting for social justice, and thus the song Spirit of Life was born. Through the process of writing the song, Carolyn reconnected to her passion and felt a renewed resolve to continue the good fight. The song, which began as one woman's personal prayer, began to take on a life of its own, and over the next decade, it began to show up in UU congregations across the United States. In the early 1990s, the UUA Hymn Book Commission approached McDade about including the song in Singing the Living Tradition, which we now know as our beloved Gray Hymnal. McDade was reluctant. She said, quote, "I thought of it as a living prayer, not a hymn. I don't feel like a hymn writer," unquote. The commission wanted to include the song in the worship section of the hymnal. But as they talked with McDade, they heard her reluctance and agreed instead to place the song in the love and compassion section of the hymnal. With that change, Carolyn McDade allowed Spirit of Life to be included in the new hymnal. In the decades since, Spirit of Life has become a regular part of worship for many UU congregations, whether it be as a chalice lighting song or a closing ritual. For many years, Spirit of Life was our closing hymn here at Chalice. Many people sing the song as a prayer for strength, just as Carolyn McDade did that night 40 years ago when she brought the song into being.
I invite you to join hands and sing together Spirit of Life. Our Sunday worship is the shared spiritual practice of our community, and we tend to the congregation during this time by honoring our joys and sorrows. If you would like to share a joy or sorrow with the congregation this morning, now is the time for sharing in the chat box. We don't speak these out loud. If you'd like to send me a confidential note about your joy or sorrow or to make a prayer request, please email me. I'll put my email address in the chat box.
got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. Here in the silence, may our hearts be open, open to feeling human pain and sorrow, open to healing, mending the tomorrow, moved by this silence here.
I'm preaching a series this spring on spiritual practices. Even before the pandemic, cultivating a daily spiritual practice was a good idea, and it's an even better idea now. We have lived through a traumatic experience, and we will be processing it for months to come. A regular spiritual practice will help you make the transition out of pandemic life. Trauma specialist Resmaa Menakem recommends 20 to 40 minutes of spiritual practice daily, just as part of basic self-care. Today is the 6th and final sermon in this series. You can find my earlier sermons on mindfulness, meditation, processing our emotions, spiritual uplift, and spiritual experience on Chalice's YouTube channel. Today, I want to talk about the spiritual practice of silence. As many of you know, I lead a week-long silent retreat every summer. So I have some in-depth experience with silence as a spiritual practice, but perhaps more importantly, I get to hear a lot about people's hopes and fears related to silence as a spiritual practice. More than any other practice that I've talked about these past few months, silence is the practice that makes people most uncomfortable just thinking about it. One of the many things I hear from people about silent retreat is, oh, I could never do that. The very idea of silence makes many people nervous. And it's easy to understand why. When I thought about offering a time of silence as part of this worship experience, for example, what immediately came to mind is how many people would think something was wrong with the Zoom if we just sat in silence, right? In our video world, especially now, silence is a sign that something is broken, not working right. Something is wrong. Silence during this type of worship would probably be the time that many of you decided to dash to the kitchen for another cup of coffee or a donut. Many of you I know are already doing other things while you listen to the worship. So if we had a time of silence, that would just make it easier for you to give your full attention to something else. This is also true for in-person worship, by the way. Too much silence makes you start to wonder if someone has forgotten that it's their turn to speak or if someone has missed a cue, right? Years ago, we used to have a time of silence after the sermon. I used a 3-minute sand timer to time it. And I heard from so many of you how long those 3 minutes seemed. And I would say, that was just 3 minutes. And people could never believe that it was so short. Silence can be a challenge. And silence isn't just one thing. You can hear as I'm talking about it that there are different kinds of silence, different things that silence means. So the most basic kind of silence is to stop talking. Many of you are sitting in silence right now because you're listening, not talking. So you can be silent, but listening to music, watching TV, reading the news or a book, playing a game, working a puzzle. You can even be silent and still be communicating, writing a letter, posting on social media, sending a text. We can be silent, but still communicate and have sound around us and still be engaged with things that keep our minds working away. Most of us are probably in the silence of not talking multiple times a day without even realizing it or thinking about it. Another type of silence is to not talk and not to communicate. No writing notes or emails or texts or social media. This might seem like a small difference, but it's actually quite significant to withdraw from communication. It can be very freeing. When I'm in this kind of silence, I realize how much time and energy I spend thinking of what I'm going to say next or write, or preparing in some way for interactions with other people. Another type of silence is to not talk, not communicate, and to minimize stimulation. So no music, no games, no reading. As you can imagine, this starts to become really challenging for most of us. In fact, if you're sitting here now, listening or watching worship and doing something else at the same time, maybe even doing a couple of other things, it might be really hard to imagine stopping all of that. In that type of silence, it's just you and your thoughts. We're immersed so much in a world of words, whether we're reading words, hearing words, or speaking words. Cutting off the flow of words and the distraction of other kinds of activities can be uncomfortable, and it can also be powerful. We're such funny creatures, human beings, and we sometimes spend enormous amounts of energy keeping ourselves so busy that we don't notice really important things that need attention in our lives. Like, we're in a relationship that isn't working, or our job is really unsatisfying, or we have grief we haven't faced and processed. This is called work avoidance, when we keep ourselves too busy to notice what needs attention in our lives. We're avoiding the work of our lives. Work avoidance is hard to keep up when you stop talking, turn off the flow of words and distractions, and just sit with your thoughts. And then another type of silence, when you've removed all other distractions and it's just you and your thoughts. Then the last practice is to see if you can slow those thoughts. See if you can just be present to the moment. One of the reasons I lead a 5-day retreat instead of a weekend retreat, for example, is that it is hard to get to that deepest level of silence in just a few days. It really starts to happen after 3 days or so, in my experience. And of course, there are retreats much longer, silent retreats much longer than 5 days as well. It takes quite a while to let go of the desire to talk, the desire for communication, the desire for stimulation. Silence is really about breaking some of the most powerful habits of our culture of overwhelm. So you might think about creating a day of silence for yourself, maybe even 2 if you can manage it. If you share a household, that means doing some planning and setting some rules so you can carve out some silence for yourself, and the people you share space with can know how to support your spiritual practice. And who knows, maybe they will want to join you in being silent. It can be good to plan out your meals so you don't have to go to the store or a restaurant and have those interactions with other people. Just the practice of disengaging from the news for a day or 2 can be very powerful. I encourage you to consider that silence can be soothing and healing, not just uncomfortable and hard. If silence is something that's missing from your life, I hope you will have the opportunity to create some silence for yourself in the coming days. Now, please join in experiencing our hymn Spirit of Life in some new ways, using sign language and hearing it in Spanish. We have a learning about the sign language, so you might take a moment to give this your attention and think about the sign language and the words.
Okay.
Here's a review of our signs for Spirit of Life. The first sign is Spirit. You put your fingers together and you do Spirit. Next sign is Life. You make L's and you bring it up like this, Life. The next one is Come. Put your hands like this and you're saying Come. And then Me. And then Sing. You put your arm out and you take your other hand and you move it back and forth like music. Sing. And then for Heart, you take your fingers and you draw a heart on your chest like that. And then Stirrings, you take your fingers like this and you bring them up you, Stirrings. And then Compassion, you turn your hands around and you stick your middle fingers out and you do this like you're gonna pet a dog or a cat. And then Blow, you're gonna move your hands like this, like you're blowing, the wind is blowing your hands around. That's Blow in the wind. And then Rise, your hands are gonna come up like this. And then See, you're gonna turn your hands over and make waves. And then Move, you're gonna take your hands like this, and you're gonna pick something up from here and move it over here. And then Hand, you're gonna take your hand and you're just gonna outline it with your other hand. And then Give, you're going to give someone something. And then Life again. And then Shape. Your thumbs like that, you make a shape. And then Justice is a little tricky. Put your thumb and your finger together like this. And you turn them. And then you go like this, like you're weighing something on a scale. You're balancing it. And that's Justice. And then Roots, you have your hand in a cup like this and you make roots come out the bottom. And then Hold Me Close, you're gonna hold it close and tight to you. And then Wings, you're gonna make 3 fingers on each hand and you're gonna make them come out from your back like wings. And then Free is, put your hands together like this again and you say free. And then you end with Spirit of Life. Come to me, come to me. You ready? Okay. Spirit.
There
The Sunday offering is an expression of the generosity that makes our congregational life possible. As Buddhist teacher Sharon Salzberg writes, generosity is characterized by the inner quality of letting go or relinquishing, being able to let go, to give up, to renounce, to give generously. These capacities spring from the same source within us. When we practice generosity, we open to all of these liberating qualities simultaneously. Please text your donation to Chalice. If you haven't texted a donation before, know that once you text the amount, you'll get a reply with a link to follow to enter your credit card information. And once you've entered this information once, when you've made a donation, you won't need to enter it again. If your Sunday donation is part of your pledge payment, please be sure to indicate the word pledge after the dollar amount. And also know that you can text a donation anytime. It doesn't need to be during the worship service. The phone number will be on screen in a moment, and I'll also put it in the chat box. Please give generously. Please join in dedicating our offering with words of affirmation. As Unitarian Universalists, we gather to affirm and promote acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Our closing words come from Unitarian Universalist Eric Williams. We all emerge from, dwell within, are transformed by, and called back to love. May your mind be humbled before this mystery. May your heart grow hopeful by it. May you be sustained by this love always. You're invited to close our time together by singing the well. Afterwards, Chalice members will gather online for our annual congregational meeting. There is no coffee hour this morning. So if you're not a member, but we're looking forward to coffee hour, we hope you'll join us again next week.